Welcome to PariChai with Pulipaka. Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of United States, who also served as the third president of the United States, once said, "Were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter." That is the power of newspapers and journalism. A very well-known and critically acclaimed author who goes by the name of Cyril Connolly also said that literature is the art of writing something that will be read twice, but journalism will be grasped at once. The reason I'm talking about journalism and the importance of reporting is because our next guest today is a distinguished young science journalist who has made her mark globally by covering cutting edge climate, energy, and environment technology and policy related news. In the third episode of PariChai with Pulipaka, where we are trying to bring the stories of young climate activists, entrepreneurs, journalists, research scientists, and policy advocates across the world. In this episode, I have with me Miss Lou Di Bello, who is a science journalist who is specialized in energy and climate change. She has over 10 years of journalistic experience spanning, I would say, across the globe, but specifically four countries, that is India, Kenya, UK, and Italy. Within her beat, she has covered everything from advancements in climate science to energy and also environment policy. And I'm very happy to share that she just started a newsletter focused on very much of these topics called Lights On, which is a way to provide accountable journalism and engage with a community of people interested in all of these subjects. So without much delay, I would like to introduce you to our next guest, Miss Lou. Hi Lou, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well.
Thank you very much for accepting my request.
Thanks for having
And
me today.
I'm sure it might look somewhat weird because generally you are the one who asks us questions, and we are always on the this end for answering your questions. But I'll not try to be as pointed as you, and we'll just have a casual conversation about climate change, energy, and your work in journalism and all. So let's begin with your journey so far, because you have worked with Bloomberg, BBC, Unduck. These are the popular household names when it comes to any reporting, especially news related to climate, energy, and environment.
Mhm.
So, what has been your experience, and how has your journey been?
My experience, maybe in India specifically, started 2 years ago. And I moved here as a freelancer. And I guess I was attracted to the idea of moving to India because so many important stories are happening here. And there's so few reporting that is trustworthy and it's interesting and really portrays what's going on and the changes and evolutions of the region in the West. So we don't know enough about that. And I thought it would have been a good adventure personally and professionally. And 2 years down the line, I kind of feel the same. And I had a chance again to work with Bloomberg, which was a very formative experience for me. I am currently their international correspondent. And for 1 year, I covered uh, environmental policy, energy policy, all that's in between, everything that's of interest to businesses and people in that space. And so I thought that I guess you can say it was a very unique experience because on the one end, I got to tap into the local context, the regional context, but also try to bring that knowledge to an international public. So for me, it was almost a gift to be able to do that and fill that gap, which is what I've been trying to do with other stories too. And I thought I'd start my newsletters because of that. I really wanted to bridge that gap. Um, I guess from a journalistic perspective, another really cool adventure that I got to, experience by moving abroad away from the UK, which is my main home, is the fact that I managed to do a lot of field reporting. And I think that sending reporters in the field is very important also for media organizations because they manage to get better stories that are more accurate and they describe the life in a place in a better way, in a more truthful way. A lot of the digital media today is about speed. So you will have lots of reporters in big cities like London Dubai, Singapore, New York, and whatnot. You
Yes.
just pick up the phone and just write the quick breaker, and that's it. So having, the privilege to actually go in there, spending time with the people and understand what the real issues are on the ground is very important. And I was very lucky to get to do that.
No, that's very interesting. And the idea behind your newsletter is also quite intriguing because, the fact reminds that we have a lot of information that is accessible to everyone today, but we never know which is authentic and what is a reliable source. So by bringing accountability into the picture, you actually, you have solved or you have taken away the pain of the readers who try to go behind authentic sources or try to filter from the resources that are available for them. Now you have been closely reporting energy related news, uh, and you've seen it before COVID, and even you're seeing it now. So how do you think this global energy transition or the strategy for this transition will change? How was it before COVID-19, and how do you think it will change after this pandemic, or rather after the lockdown ends? I don't know when the pandemic ends.
Yeah, exactly. And that will also play a part. Like the lockdown might be ending, but if the pandemic is not under control, then that will create a sort of problems.
Yes.
I guess, like for my reporting, for what I've been seeing, it is really the way we all expected, namely in the renewable energy space specifically. We have seen a big slump in installations of new power plants, and that's because obviously, if you think about the financial situation, obviously there has been a big crash, and so the money wasn't quite there or wasn't
Yes.
dispersed. But also, if you imagine the practicality of it, if you have to build a power plant, you have to send people there. Are these people essential workers? Maybe yes, or not necessarily. So there are some controversy in the US, for example. A lot of fossil fuel companies have advocated for sending their employees on site and keep working on these power plants, saying, oh, this is essential. But on the other hand, they have advocated for keeping solar employees and solar operators at home. So all of
Yes.
that obviously has been a big shake-up. And I guess the big question now is to see what's going to happen after. And we can only rely, I guess, as a journalist, I always try to convey the most trusted sources. I can, I have my own opinions, but I always want to get to the source and ask the experts what they think. And so I guess one good place to start is one of the latest reports from the International Energy Agency that looked into that specifically, so how the future is going to be and whether renewables will bounce back or not. And yeah, here we have, I just wanted to show this chart. And as you can see, you see what happens in 2020, and all these sort of downward bars are sort of capturing the situation that's a little depressing. And except for hydropower, that keeps doing quite well. And then in 2021, there's a rebound. So some sources will sort of get momentum again.
Yes.
That's wind and big solar powers. I remember the analyst mentioning, and as it's shown in the chart, that solar PV for households like rooftop solar will struggle more. It struggled massively during the crisis, but it will struggle more. And one of the reasons is people will not have lots of money to install a solar panel on their roof. Like it's something that is down to the private citizen to decide whether they want a solar panel or not. And as you can imagine, after a big crisis, not many people will be in the financial position to say, I'm going to invest quite a bit of money because it's going to be useful for me in the future. It's going to save me money. So that's the reason. And then another, I think, quite interesting sort of notion shown in this graph is hydropower that is growing massively, and that's because there are two big hydropower plants under construction in China. So that's the main driver of that.
Yes.
Overall, we see there is a rebound, but it's going to be like the agency says, it's going to be quite slow. So it will all depend, I think it will all depend on the policies that each country will implement. And in India in particular, there are some structural issues that will have to be looked into for the renewable sector to rebound.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you because even at the federation level, when we have been analyzing, rooftop segment is the one that will take the biggest hit.
Yeah.
And unfortunately or coincidentally, it is the one that employs more people than the utility scale. So I fully agree with you, and I think this is a very valuable perspective that will enable us to uh, take a step back and think on how to channelize the resources once this either the lockdown ends or once things start coming into sort of normal stage. Now, over last 2-3 years, you've been in India. You've been observing India's uh, both, I would say, ambitious climate goals, ambitious renewable energy targets, projects on ground. So, what is your take on the trajectory so far? And I generally ask this question to everyone, especially the journalists, about the three trees: the trajectory, the target, and the terrain. So, how do you think we have fared so far? How do you think the landscape is, and whether we are in a position to achieve our targets, both in terms of renewable energy as a whole and solar energy in specific?
Right. I mean, the way I consider myself an external observer, maybe an informed one after living here for a while, but still an external pair of eyes. And I guess for me, the trajectory is always an encouraging one because we can see the numbers speak for themselves, and we see that there's a lot of investment and a lot of ambition into trying new things and exploring, breaking new grounds. At the same time, there are a lot of goals that have proven kind of unrealistic. So, for example, the renewable pledges under Paris, to see that we are, India as a country is still very, very behind. It's very unlikely that these goals will be met. So, yeah, I guess there is, on the one hand, this tension between a fantastic ambition and real progress, but the narrative that maybe the administration of the people at the top want to feed to the world are a bit too ambitious. And I wonder if this will eventually create issues down the line, because at some point they will have to explain away the fact that they haven't met these goals. For the rest, I guess the main issue that India will have to look into, it's a problem is structural, so it cannot be overcome overnight. But the state of its distribution companies is such an important problem. They're constantly in debt. They are in huge financial trouble, and so this obviously creates problems for the whole supply chain and the whole system. Because obviously, I always like to say, every chain is as strong as its weakest link. So that means that if we have amazing capacity, amazing investment into renewable energy, but we can't connect what we produce to the grid and eventually bring it to the homes, then it's for nothing. So I guess we will have to see once again what's the government going to do to solve this problem. And from my conversation with analysts across the spectrum, I hear various takes, and I think the consensus is that just injecting cash to help these companies pay their immediate debts is not going to be enough.
Yes.
So there is need for more structural reforms.
No, I agree with you. There is, without any doubt, an immediate necessity for structural reforms, both inside the system and even from the outside the system also. Fundamentally, there might be some things which are very good, but there are also things that are that we have to look from a very critical point of view. Now, coming back to energy journalism. So, what makes energy journalism different than it was in 90s and now? I'm sure you were not there then, but you must have an idea about the difference.
Yeah, looking at the past, and of course, and I think that I have to say, obviously, I wasn't there yet, but I started being interested in energy issue when I was very young. So even just 10, 15 years ago, things were very different. I think the main novelty today is that through the advent of renewable energies, and they have become more mainstream, and people understand more about the urgency of an energy transition, then the whole field of energy journalism and energy communication has become more mainstream, because people have access to better means of information, so they can
Yes.
interact more. They have more access to good information, and B, they are more interested, because ultimately everyone knows about climate change now, and the way energy is produced and the way energy is distributed and managed really affects everyone. In India, obviously, living in Delhi, one main thing that affects us every year, it's almost a seasonal thing. In reality, lasts the whole year, but in winter we feel it particularly, just this pollution
Yes.
that makes us all sick. So I think it's something that people cannot ignore, and now they have the means to get informed. And I think the exciting challenge and the job of energy journalists nowadays is to really offer a platform for people to be informed and to understand the ins and outs of these dynamics. They're very complex. And obviously, I think I would like to add, as any, what this applies to any journalist, the fight against fake news. It's very important, and it's something that we all have to
Yes.
embark on. So yeah, I think, and it's particularly important in specialistic fields, because they're so complex that it's so easy to just say something random, and people are like, oh, well, that makes sense. And it's only natural. It's the
Yes.
same
Yes.
in a way. I bet it's the same for other fields, like in this case, healthcare journalism. We all
True.
see this flurry of fake news about the spread of COVID and treatments for COVID. And I think there's a parallel there to be drawn between these issues and the issues that climate journalists and the energy journalists can face as they try to do their job. So yeah.
No, I definitely agree with you. Which brings to my next question. So, how is a typical day in the life of an energy journalist, especially for someone like you who is scouting stories across the globe? Uh,
I lost you for a second.
no,
You're
I
back.
wanted to. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, how is a day? How is a typical day in the life
Okay.
of an energy journalist, especially for someone like
Right.
you who covers stories across the globe?
I guess the first thing that is very typical, and I think in my mind is something that everyone does, but I just realized it's just me, is being online 24/7. Like, I go to bed maybe at 1 a.m. with my phone and just like scrolling the news and see what's happening in the US. And then I wake up and I see what's happening in India, and in between I will check the news from Europe. So it's kind of this cycle of being constantly connected and keeping an eye on everything. And then I guess for me, the challenge is not to get lost in this sort of stream of constant information from everywhere across the globe. And so I like to curate my sources. So I choose maybe who to follow on Twitter quite carefully, and try not to follow too many people, but to select the voices that are more important for my work. And I think they are more authoritative, and I can inform my understanding of the issue better. So that's what I do. And I guess on a typical day, when I write a story, there's always this tension between, choosing what matters in that moment for the story you're telling, which is from a regional perspective, but also trying to bring with you an audience that might be international. So sometimes you want to report a story and say, and include all the things that matter from a local perspective, but then you realize you have to speak to an audience that might not have that understanding of these specific issues. So I guess it's always a thinking process that requires you to unpick all of this. So it's very tiring, but it's very fun.
Yeah, I can imagine it is both excruciating as well as exhausting, but it is very interesting also. Uh,
Yeah.
I would now like to focus on something that is very relevant and which is a main reason for this podcast. So, what, according to you, you think is the key factor to inspire more young people or more youth to join this climate change movement?
I think I actually think the young people are doing the job that we should have done as previous generation. Like they're inspiring each other, and I think they know that for their generation there is more at stake because for people that were born in the 1940s, they're now in their 50s or 70s. Well, climate change might not be something that they experience in its brutality in their lifetime, whereas for people who were born 15 years ago, well, then it's something that is really relevant and they understand the urgency. Um, I reported on a couple of stories. Actually, it was quite interesting when I got to speak to various teenagers that organized online campaigns using new media. So just on Twitter, for example, and they were really organized and they were creating networks that were entirely digital. And well, I mean, very useful right now because nobody can leave their homes. But even before, I think young people are really tapping into the potential of new formats to get organized. So I'm generally not the most optimistic person, and I think when you cover climate change and energy, it's hard to be super optimistic. But I think really seeing how young people are taking the lead is very heartening. It makes you feel very optimistic. So I think we can only be allies and follow the lead in a way.
No, I sort of agree with you on that. That many young people are trying to take the baton upon themselves and they are leading from the front. Now, you've been closely reporting about the energy transition in developing countries. According to you, who do you think will, I won't say win, but come out on the top on this race to lead the global energy transition between India and China? Because both of them have ambitious goals. China has OBOR, India has International Solar Alliance. So both of them are going big guns on this energy transition arena on a global scale.
Yeah.
Domestically, they must be doing something, but on a global scale also. So what is your opinion and what are your thoughts on it?
Right. I think it's a hard question, but I can only tell you my impressions. So we'll have to see. But I think China obviously has a competitive advantage of stronger renewable economy and quite powerful R&D and powerful manufacturing sector. So, for example, we all see what's happening globally with China being the main solar uh, panel, solar panel producer.
Yes.
And India, I think my impression is that for India to really triumph on a global scale, um, the country should not make it a race. India should not try to catch up with what China is doing because China is
Yes.
too much ahead already.
Yes.
But there are fields that are poised to become super important in the future, like battery storage, for example, or even electric mobility. All of that is supposed to become very, very important, and it's still a set of technologies that is in its infancy. Like various countries are doing a lot already, but it's not a technology that is established, like solar PV, for example. And so I think really in order to become that global power in energy transition, like India aspires to be, I think it would be probably strategic to focus on those goals um, and try to lead on that, which is
Yes.
doable. I mean, I think analysts all agree that this is still doable and there's still a lot of space. India has a lot of manpower, it's a big
We
country,
do.
and all businesses, foreign businesses really want to come to India and do business in India
Yes.
despite some set of policies that can be protectionists and can maybe put off some international companies, and still companies want to flock to India, which is, I think, a testament of how strategically important the market is.
In fact, the two sectors that you said, both in terms of battery manufacturing and even in e-mobility, including PV module manufacturing, I fully agree with you that we should not catch up, but we should lead. And in the new economic stimulus package that the government has announced, fortunately or coincidentally, these two have been identified as champion sectors. So we are yet to see to what extent that will result in actual benefits down the stream in the entire industrial ecosystem. So now finally, what is your message or your hack for young journalists or journalist enthusiasts who wish to pursue their career in this? Because you started out pretty young and you've covered a lot, I mean, I would say a large ground to be where you're here. So maybe our viewers can use a couple of your hacks to get their own perspective.
Yeah, I hope so. I guess my journey is a bit unconventional because I started, as you said, it's true, I started very young in Italy. And maybe it's not something that everyone knows, but in Italy, people do not speak English at all. It's a tiny country and it's very close. And so when I got to move many years later, I was thrown into this brand new world, and I had to learn a different language and start working in this language right away. So that was quite a challenge. But I think it's a good. I think it's a good story that illustrates the challenges of being a journalist today. So it's not a profession that is going to be very stable. If you look for a job that is stable and will bring you lots of money, probably this is not the profession. There will be people, there are few selected people that will be lucky and will land a fantastic job. Yes. But everyone will have lots of bumps on the road. And most people will have to rely on their resilience, which is what I've done all my life. So I try to explore and go where I felt that there were stories to be told. So I decided to move countries a few times, and yeah, I'm very happy to have done that. So I would say that's your passion, absolutely persist. Just don't be put off by initial setbacks or by the fact that the industry is in a terrible state at the moment, especially after COVID. So I'm not sure I would like the hand on my heart. I'm not sure I could advise people to take that route right now. But you never know. If you have passion, just as long as you're willing to get your hands dirty and make it work and be creative and speak to people who have done it before you and have those conversations and eventually forge your own path. It's not going to be easy and it's not going to be stable like other professions, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I agree. Passion, no. Passion is a very integral part of achieving any dream and all. But finally, can you take us through your personal blog or your new blog? Sorry, not the personal blog.
Okay.
I mean, the title is very catchy. It's Lights On. It is both. I mean, it has a literal meaning and a figurative meaning. I don't know whether that was your intention when you had the title there. One on the stage of drama where you have lights on to begin the story, or on the energy context also having access to electricity. So that's how I understood it. So can you talk us through it about why did you start it and how are things going there?
Yeah. So yes, you're correct. That was the idea. And I think the idea started because I've always worked in that space. But I felt right now, especially in times of crisis, it's important to explore new models of journalism and new models, as we were saying before, to engage community and accountability projects. Yes. Like when you know the person that is producing your content and you trust them, and they help you trust in them by showing the sources that they're using, by asking for feedback, by involving a community of practitioners or experts in whatever they produce. I think that is a good way to have that productive conversation. And newsletters are today a fantastic way to do that, because people are always free to, they receive whatever they want. It's quite tailored. They can choose to subscribe to a newsletter that covers specifically what they're interested in. And also they have the possibility to ask questions and give feedback and share. And obviously they know who the person responsible is. Very often, with a newspaper, I might be the reporter who has worked on a story, but the story might be slightly different because an editor went to the story and changed it a bit. Or the headline might be written by someone else. And so there is so much scope for the process to be quite opaque and losing that transparency. So I think that's my attempt to create that community and to also bridge that gap that's left by international media ignoring what's going on in South Asia, despite it being such an important part of the world. But when it comes to climate and energy journalism, too often it's just about what happens in the States, what happens in Europe. And when journalists report on climate change in Asia or in India, it's always about disasters or it's about poverty, and it's just a very flat, monodimensional narrative that I really want to challenge, showing the innovation, the controversy, how the country progresses, and what the hurdles to overcome are. So I guess that's my elevator pitch.
No, I think that's, like I mentioned before also, that's very much needed now, because in my field of work, I interact with a lot of journalists, and most often the meaning gets lost, if not in the translation, at least in the transposition. So it's very important to get the right meaning out, and also provide a sort of accountable source or accountable note from which people can just develop their perspective and get the actual facts rather than polished versions. So I really wish you all the very best for your lights on. And once again, thank you very much for coming on the show. And as Thomas Jefferson he said it very well, that we can work without governments, but we can't work without newspaper and news. I hope you continue your journey with the same spirit and passion, and educate and inform more and more people about what's going on across the globe, especially across the India. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
And one final pick with your cup, so that this is for the show. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.